is a noted historian, author of many books, and I think what's key with Webster, he's very active in a lot of activities. He is the regular of the Sunday call, and we do make that invitation to the Sunday call to people here. It is something that has been going on for a number of years. But here's the thing. You know, Webster he went to Libya, he went to Syria, he advised people in Iceland on saying no to the bankers and things. He's here, he's with us, and Webster.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind applause. Now, since we already heard about book tours, I am on a poor man's book tour. It's going to be the Chinatown bus for me. But let me call your attention to my book, just published in the last week or two, Just Too Weird, Bishop Romney and the Mormon Takeover of America. With polygamy, theocracy, and subversion. And I especially recommend the polygamy chapter, which gets quite interesting. I wrote 2 books against Obama in useful time to try to prevent him from getting the nomination. They didn't listen to me. And now I'm trying to tell the American people, you can't vote without knowing these basic facts about the history of Mormonism, which is a political faction. It's a theocratic political party, or Freemasonry, which somehow masquerades as a religion. Now, I also want to call your attention to this document. This is simply a submission. This is coming from me only, not approved by the UFAA, but it's a kind of a political report on the current situation, and I think everybody here has gotten one. Otherwise, you can get it on the internet. I know it's at tarpley.net, and I think it's also on the UFAA, or it's widely available. Now, I would like to thank Reverend Pinckney, first of all. That was a report from the trenches. That policy of having a dictator come in and run an entire city, and of course it's Benton Harbor, Michigan, Flint, Michigan, Pontiac, Michigan, Ecorse, Michigan, the entire Detroit city school system, and really Detroit as a city is under the gun of the same thing. It is a fascist policy. This is what happened in Germany under Brüning from 1930 to 1932, was emergency management on a national level, austerity dictatorship. This is indeed the model for every city, every town, every county, every state, and for the United States as a whole. Now, I want to, again, thank Reverend Pinckney, who I found that extremely interesting and moving. What we have to do about that is action. If the struggle is left to Benton Harbor alone, if it's Michigan alone, or even if it's the labor movement alone, this will not be enough. We've got to spread it to the other groups in the population and indeed internationally, right? Fascism in Michigan. Now, in the time, and this I hope this is, you get the idea, this is the method of what we're proposing. The United Front Against Austerity wants to intervene. We need to do things. And above all, we've got to link up the otherwise fragmented and isolated struggles into some kind of a common front, powerful as we can make it, with a program. And I would say the following. We want to work between now and the election, not so much concerned about who will win, because whether it's Romney or Obama, the austerity assault will come under either one. But to work between now and election day to publicize and secure victory for the 2 ballot questions that are now going to be on the Michigan state ballot. And I think there's a lot to do here, because I have to tell you, when I heard this from Reverend Pinckney about a week ago, I did not know that they had succeeded in this tremendous signature gathering drive. You'll remember there was a lot of attention focused on Wisconsin, but very little on Michigan. There was, as he said, about 250,000 signatures. They are on the ballot. And what we're talking about is two statewide proposals. Statewide Proposal A calls for a referendum to repeal the fascist emergency manager law. That would put an end to it. And statewide proposal B calls for the reaffirmation of a right to organize for labor under a public and private. And these are directed against this austerity dictatorship of Republicano-fascist Governor Snyder of Michigan. Now, I would propose that we kick off our activities by mobilizing worldwide, and I stress worldwide, to call attention to this, because if you watch MSNBC or Fox, they will not tell you this. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know whether Democracy Now! has done justice to this. Now, to be very brief, everything that I say refers to this document, so I've tried to give you the background for it. We are in a world economic depression, and the ruling elite around the world, the 1%, the financier oligarchs, have responded to the depression with this insane policy of austerity. We've seen it in Greece, we've seen it in Spain, we've seen it in Great Britain. It is a failure. It kills people, causes human suffering. It does not succeed in its own terms. It does not balance the budget. It makes the budget deficit worse. But they don't care. This is now coming to the United States, and it's coming after this election. The election is largely a farce, and the reason they don't talk about what they're going to do is because what they're going to do is flay you alive. Obama is promising a 15% cut in the standard of living, and Romney thinks he can promise more, 25%, but I think the argument from Obama then is, well, but then you'll have some kind of a civil war or large-scale social chaos, so it'll end up costing you more. This is coming in December, right after the election. You know the code words. The lame duck session, with all those congressmen who are going to be looking for Wall Street jobs. The fiscal cliff, a complete piece of manufactured hysteria, and the grand bargain. Obama, in his acceptance speech, said that he was eager for a grand bargain with these fascist Republicans in the House of Representatives. And just in the last couple of days, we've had the famous Des Moines Register interview with Obama. It was off the record. It then became on the record, and it has shocked a lot of people. He says that he is absolutely committed to the policy of the grand bargain. Now, that leaves a lot of people in a terrible situation. The AFL-CIO, the main trade union organization, is going to be mobilizing and spending and sweating blood for Obama up to November 6th. On November 8th, they're going to be organizing against Obama. They're going to be mobilizing for him up to November 6th, and then they've got to pivot, as they say, and then go against him on the austerity issue. We have to have, I guess, sympathy for brother Richard Trumka, the head of the AFL-CIO. He's now on record saying he does not want a grand bargain, because a grand bargain means tax cuts for the rich and austerity cuts, killer cuts for working people, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the social safety net. But naturally, we are the United Front Against Austerity. We can give brother Trumka some advice. Here's what he should do, two things. The first thing he needs to do is to link this mobilization, which the AFL-CIO is going to have on November 8th. They will have local events and other events protesting austerity. The AFL-CIO has to inject into that the Wall Street sales tax, the 1% tax on all turnover, the quadrillions of dollars that come rumbling through lower Manhattan. The quadrillions of dollars. Austerity is not necessary. The only reason we have it is because Wall Street pays no tax. Here in the state of New York, there is a Wall Street sales tax. It would provide $20 to $30 billion for the New York State budget, but the Democratic Party and Republican governors, since Governor Hugh Carey, have given it back to Wall Street under extortion that otherwise they'll go to New Jersey. So here's what Brother Trumka needs to do. To say, we reject austerity, there will be no austerity, we're demanding the 1% Wall Street sales tax. We're demanding that that be passed immediately by these lame ducks. Let them pass this, the Wall Street sales tax. And in order to make that stick, we want a general strike We want a general strike all across the United States, and the platform of the general strike is the Wall Street sales tax. And I think that's typical of the kind of advice, the kind of intervention that we can and must do. In the case of Benton Harbor, in the case of Michigan, if people want to know, well, if you're proposing to give union rights to the public workers and others, who's going to pay for it? We have the answer, the Wall Street sales tax. Wall Street will pay for this. If it's a question of a public sector union, policemen, firemen, teachers, other kinds of public workers, at any level, cities, counties, state, federal, anything, the Wall Street sales tax. And if it's a question of cutting social services, of putting the axe to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment benefits, child nutrition programs, Head Start, WIC, and so on down the line, the answer is, in every case, the Wall Street sales tax. Now, I propose, we'll talk about this now in the afternoon in the debate, and we're going to have an open debate about this because there are divergent opinions, that the signature demand, the leading edge of our agitation ought to be the Wall Street sales tax. There are competing proposals. Some people say GlassSteagall. GlassSteagall is a fine thing, but GlassSteagall is a process reform. When you're dealing with working people, you're dealing with people who need immediate assistance. They have life and death problems of education, health, paying the rent, buying food. GlassSteagall proposes to divide the investment bank from the commercial bank from the insurance company. It's essential, it's a fine thing, but it's a process reform. It's rather in the category of campaign finance reform, a very good thing, essential, but somehow not connected to the immediate existential predicament of a lot of people. Now, in terms of organizing then the recovery, or maybe just one before that, in addition to the GlassSteagall being replaced by the Wall Street sales tax, I propose, the following points. The most basic anti-austerity demand is no cuts. No cuts, no firings, no layoffs. No tax increases on working people. No user fees. No cuts in social services. No cuts in the social safety net. That's what austerity is. We're against it in every case. Our second point is the student loan amnesty. It means, at least for the next 5 years, and probably forever, a complete freeze, a complete halt on all payments of interest and principal on $1 trillion of relatively high interest student debt. This could be done by executive order, and it's very clear. I can show you how. The student loan problem, this $1 trillion of debt, is stopping the normal progress of human life. When young people get out of college, they need to find an apartment or someplace for them to live on their own as adults. They've got to get married. They've got to have children. Along the way, they may pursue advanced degrees. The $1 trillion of student loan debt is stopping human life, or in technical terms, the process of social reproduction is now in collision with the question of debt and the contracts that have been sealed. But now, we have an even more potent argument. Leon Panetta, the Secretary of Defense, said the other day that U.S. troops are now more afraid of going bankrupt through student loan debt and other forms of debt. They're more afraid of that than they are of combat with the enemy. It's interfering with the military, and it's interfering with their security clearances, because if you go bankrupt, you lose your security clearance, because it means you have a chaotic life. Now, since we're in the season of the 150th anniversary of the Emancipation Proclamation, it reminds us that under a war emergency, you can do all sorts of good things. And in this case, it would be possible simply to issue an executive order saying, under the argument that even a Republican would have a hard time refuting, we're freezing all student loan debt payments for 5 years, and then we'll talk about it, but don't hold your breath. It would be a way the zombie bankers down the street could say thank you to the younger generation for the fact that they were bailed out under the tarp and with $27 trillion of Federal Reserve funds. We want to stop foreclosures. We need a uniform federal law to stop all foreclosures. These foreclosures are illegitimate. They were done by robo-judges, robo-signers, robo-cops. I have to take my hat off. We have the honor of one vice presidential candidate. Let's not forget Sherry Hunkala, who is the vice presidential candidate of the Green Party. She ran for sheriff of Philadelphia last year, saying, as sheriff, she would stop foreclosures because she wouldn't carry them out. She would simply refuse to carry out any foreclosure. We need to make this into a uniform federal law. The model is what was done in the Depression, the Fraser-Lemke Act of the New Deal, which simply said, if you can get any judge at any level to approve any kind of a payment plan, you stay in your primary residence or farm or other property. Another point, Medicare for all. Medicare for all is the obvious starting point for healthcare reform. Naturally, Obama didn't do this, and I would urge people to call it Medicare for all. If you go to the average person and say single payer, what does that mean? It took me a long time to figure that out. Don't call it single payer. Don't call it the public option. Nobody knows what these are. Medicare for all taps into the tremendous goodwill felt by many families to Medicare, the most successful federal program really of all time in lowering the morbidity and mortality rates of people over 65. So, and the bill is one sentence. It simply says, remove the age 65 from the Medicare law, and it's done. One or two more. The usury question. We have predatory lenders, payday lenders, preying on low-income people. Before the age of Paul Adolph Volcker, most states had usury laws. 10% was the ceiling on any kind of a note. Let's have a uniform federal anti-usury law that says no interest-bearing instrument, financial instrument of any kind in the United States is allowed to have more than a 10% yield, or maybe lower if you'd like to debate that point. This would have the effect of lowering the burden of credit card debt on many people. Finally, the living wage, the minimum wage. If we go back even to the historical record, the highest level of the minimum wage in terms of constant dollars was in 1968 when it was between $10 and $11. So I would say the immediate demand is take the minimum wage from $7.25, where it is now, up to $11 as a first step towards further increases. So we'd have a step-by-step increase to something in the neighborhood of $15 to $20 an hour. One last point now, or actually two. The question of the recovery is, I think, the heart of the entire matter. Now, we have Paul Krugman and other Keynesians who say, simply have an on-federal budget jobs program. And I would say this is not the best way to do it. The federal budget is going to be in demand because of these social safety net proposals that we're making. Rather, we have to look at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has got to be nationalized, seized, federalized, deprivatized. You call it what you want. We want that credit-creating power to organize a recovery. The zombie banks can never do it. The zombie banks down the street are bankrupt, derelict entities themselves. They're choked with bankrupt derivatives. Rather, what we need is to seize control of that and start putting out a credit stimulus, is the name for it. Call it an infrastructure window, a Main Street window, 0% federal credit with maturities up to 100 years, the century bond, in order to allow the states to build the entire interstate highway system, including bridges, rebuilt. The entire rail network, passenger, freight, and commuter, rebuilt. We've got to rebuild the entire electrical grid, production and distribution. We've got to rebuild the canals, water systems, and ports. How long since we built a new port? Other countries are building them. We've got to build schools. We need about 1,000 hospitals to get back where we were under the the situation in about 1970. Public housing. How about public housing that could be built with 0% credit? The only thing we need to do is to get through this principle of forcing the Fed to do what we say. The other thing, of course, is the Federal Reserve has to drop its preferential treatment of banks, financial institutions, again, zombie bankers, hedge fund hyenas, and instead put itself at the service of production. If you're in manufacturing, mining, energy production, scientific research, farming, anything that produces a tangible physical product, then you get preferential treatment, not the financial services guy. So we redress the balance in favor of making things, as they say on television these days. Finally, just to re-stress, the organizing method is that of the United Front. We've heard from distinguished representatives of the tradition of Martin Luther King. We're all in it. King's program at the end of his life was what? To unite civil rights with anti-war and labor. He died supporting a strike of the Memphis garbage men, largely black garbage men. That's our method. We're trying to build the broad front. That's the United Front. We need to look at Benton Harbor, Michigan, Michigan in general. We've got to look at Freeport, Illinois, where there's a company, Sensata, is fighting Bain Capital. There's going to be a Walmart strike soon. We need to intervene to get those two ballot questions passed in Michigan. After that, we've got to intervene, and we've got to intervene the whole time to make Brother Trumpka see the light. We need the Wall Street sales tax and a nationwide general strike. We've also got to look abroad. Peugeot in France is shutting down factories. English Ford Motor Corporation, British branch, shutting down factories. Can we look forward to the day for a transatlantic general strike, United States and Europe to start with, in order to impose the Wall Street sales tax and roll back austerity by taxing financial incomes? And students, yeah, sure. Well, of course, the general strike means everybody. General strike, by the way, means everybody in the entire society. Unemployed, employed, unionized, non-unionized, every minority, every group, every organization that there is. Now, in the afternoon, I hope we can develop a real programmatic discussion. The time for protest is over. Occupy Wall Street had positive results for a while, but ultimately it has left us with not much at the end of the year. If you look at the Tea Party, they put 80 members into the House of Representatives and 6 senators. I'm looking in vain for something similar coming out of Occupy Wall Street. A lot of people were hijacked by Ron Paul and his demagogy, and it turned out that Ron Paul was a wingman for Romney, and that Ron Paul's austerity was the worst of all. $1 trillion of cuts in the first year. That's a program for genocide. We're now looking at a void at the center of American protest or anti-establishment politics. There's nothing left. A lot of the movements that had existed have been essentially swept away by Obama, and now with Obama receding, there is now this empty space, which I think it is our task to fill. So we urge people to get in touch with us. Get in touch with the United Front Against Austerity. Link up to the things we're doing. And if you've got an isolated situation of struggle, get in touch with us and let's see what we can do nationally and worldwide to try to at least call attention and do propaganda. And we're looking forward to all kinds of activities, propaganda and education activities in this lame duck period, which is coming up now. So we want to thank everybody who contributed, I think, to the clear success already of this effort, and stay with us for the rest of the day, because we will have essentially an open mic in the afternoon and a real programmatic debate. So thank you very much.